thank you for joining us here in the Goins Auditorium and online as well. And I am happy to share a little bit of a talk of some of the work that I've been doing with Cindy Atchley in Career Services and kind of extrapolating the story of that for the lessons that we've learned and how that can actually be useful throughout the entire college. And we'll be looking at an example of career services movements across the country and how they can easily be applied with what we already do here. Most of the motivation of this comes from some of the biggest challenges, I'm pretty sure, regardless of what area of the college you work with, that some of these issues are prime concerns of what we work with every day, trying to improve retention and graduation rates, success rates in classes, how to actually improve student engagement, and what do we want to actually measure to actually be able to confirm that a student is really engaged. And then how can academic departments and programs continue and evolve to keep up, not just with making sure their students are successful with their programs, but that their programs are actually going to lead them to be successful into the career fields and four-year universities that they'll be going to. So right now, the way a lot of this is measured is we have a plethora of student demographic information. Are they a first-generation student? Are they a Pell student? Are they college-ready? And more. And we go and we can, through initiatives like Achieving the Dream, we can actually compare that with some levels of student engagement as far as how successful are some of these groups being broken down into specific courses that we've identified as, if you do well in these classes, you tend to do well and maintain your retention and graduation, and vice versa, being able to identify where the weak areas of those are. And again, we have the main goal of retention and graduation with this approach. Now, granted, I'm probably missing some nooks and crannies along the way, so this is really just an example bird's eye view of an approach I'm wanting to show. So this new approach I'm wanting to show is more of a holistic approach of you take what you're doing and you actually share it with other groups and see where there's overlap and where there's new opportunities. And in this, we're looking at really all departments, all participants, all data, and we're trying to find new ways to work together. With career services across the nation, some of the biggest movements have found, I believe, some great overlap. With one of the leading associations, the National Association of Colleges and Employers, they have identified key competencies that they want career services departments to work on to help students be ready for using their degree with their job when they graduate. But if you go and you look at what those career competencies are, there's leadership, working together in teams, communication skills. They're kind of things that overlap with what we already identify as student success initiatives. And that presents a new opportunity in the fact that employers are engaged with this approach, career services departments are engaged with this approach, and these are issues that can be tackled that can engage a student from the first day that they start classes. So now we have more departments engaged in the same interest areas to come up with new activities to engage with students that can be measured and contribute to success of the student through the college program. There's some additional resources I've included here, so I can share the presentation as well, as far as the University of Illinois has an amazing presentation that they put together that shows the different ways that they're looking at their data within their own department and measuring that data in ways to find new opportunities to, okay, we went and we tried this and it succeeded in these areas and not these areas. Can we take the successes of that, apply that broadly to our other initiatives, and then maybe taper down what doesn't work with that initiative? And then one of the areas that we'll be doing a proof of concept exploration towards the end of this talk involves what's called exploratory data analysis, which would lead into machine learning. Machine learning is a wonderful concept that's awesome to talk about because it involves meta-computer analysis of statistical interpretations of data that no one can actually look at, which is why we have a machine doing the learning for us. And it's something that is taking off, and you'll see why once we get towards the end, so much of the fact that it's becoming cover articles of almost every organizational publication of figuring out how we can go and benefit from using this kind of data. So taking some of these factors in mind, this is a new interpretation broadening of what we had looked at before with this simple approach. So now we're looking at kind of the same info that students are bringing in, but we're also looking into faculty, staff, the employers that work with us. What are their interests and what are the measurable outcomes that we can have with those? And is there any way that some of the initiatives that we're working on can go and feed into, just for students as an example, participation, interaction, follow-up with measurable outcomes to lead to better opportunities to, if we're going to do something and we can have more than one benefit for it, why not have that? Why not have that? Microphone. So this is just another lens of an approach to think of, okay, so I'm working on this thing in curriculum development, and we need to make sure that our students are going to be prepared and able to handle this issue, because this is something that an employer really needs for the field and the major that we're working in. Well, is that something that maybe the employer might have some ideas for possible activities that they can do and engage with students on campus throughout the semester, or a career services department to come up with opportunities to help build career readiness skills so that you have a more natural part of the college experience rather than these one-off opportunities of, okay, I'm only going to think about employers as a student when it's time for me to get a job. Whereas if you're exposed to employers your entire time through your program, you're already networked, you already have a realistic set of expectations for that. And you have a lens of, I want to work to get to where I can get jobs with these awesome employers, and that's going to give me extra motivation to do well with these classes. So you have feedback going back and forth between these different areas, and what we're about to explore are just a couple of different ways to look at data as we have it now to bridge some of those gaps. So the nice thing about my rambling and description is I've already covered almost everything on this slide. So I'm saving you from this wall of text right here, but it's here for future reference if you do ever need it. Going into the idea of trying to get more out of what we already do, here's an example of one of the things that I worked with Cindy and others to create for career services. Here we have the first day I came in a couple years ago. This was our career services database. It was awesome. You got to manually input 100% of the information, and a lot of the actual work we did was in multiple versions of spreadsheets, which were a lot of fun to try and keep track of. What we have now is an integrated database solution. It's in Access, so we wanted to make sure it was extra fun. And what we have now is right here. I worked with Mike Kennedy, very special thanks to him, but we now integrate everything that if it is in Banner or Dynamic Forms, it's an automatic process that gets pulled over. And on top of that, all of the manual processes that we did before, we have a way to actually put those in to where we can use those as a check. So whenever every system has its own update process, sometimes fields can change. This allows to where you're double checking your work and you're catching any change that can happen so that the system is able to basically maintain itself when you maintain your connections and work with it that way. And the nice thing is, it's a little accessible. Those little question marks are links to graphically outlined training tutorials for each of those groups. So everything is in context to learn what's going on with each of those systems. And then further, as you notice, we have a lot of different functions. We have a workflow instead of dealing with 30 or 40 different spreadsheets. We have just one simple process that covers multiple different areas. And since everything is organized into a central place, we're able to go and give much more detailed and customizable responses immediately. What we're looking at here is for our internal metrics, we always had to kind of measure and count manually all of the jobs that we referred out. based on what major they were for that job. And as you can see here, it's this beautiful Microsoft Word document that totally would never ever have like an entry issue or anything like that, and it's very easy to sort through. What we've moved to now is all of that is input into the database as we receive and perform the referrals, and all you have to do is type in 2 date numbers and it gives you a nice sorted list here. And this is the report format. There's a query format you can work with that you can go and you can modify it so you can see, I just want to see an employer, all the different majors that we've referred for it, or a particular sort by date as it's sorted in this format. You have a lot more versatility working with the same data, and you're able to address questions exactly as they come in. So next we're going to look at a couple other tools that take things to the next step with this approach. Microphone, there we go. Make sure this microphone is on here because I'm not going to be walking around. So how many people are familiar with this? This is our annual placement percentages. It's great to put in folders. It gives you a nice bird's eye view of what our official placement rates are for different majors. But I don't know about you, but when I was first trying to be a student and I was looking into programs, it's like, okay, I know that I can get X jobs according to what National BLS and ONET try to go and tell us as far as what you can use with your major, but I want to know exactly the types of jobs and exactly the employers that I could be working with the degree that I graduate. So taking this exact same information, we have this new tool that is, once we determined and get the final stamp of approval and where we want to have it hosted, it will be available to use. But you can go and you can select any Associate of Applied Science or certificate, because those are the areas that we measure. No General Associate of Arts or General Associate of Science, because those are designed to transfer. So for your universities would change the final outcomes for those groups. But with these groups, we can go and let's say someone is going into networking and they're curious what kind of job titles they might have to deal with. So you go and you load. This dynamically updates with the percentage rate, and you actually get a raw count too, so you can see how those numbers are affecting that placement percentage. But then the employers will filter down, as well as the job titles, to these are the exact job titles and employers that our graduates get once they have our degree. And this is particularly helpful with some of our degrees that might have overlap with 4-year programs like accounting. There might be a lot of people that are like, okay, whenever I go and I look for accounting, they're always saying needs a 4-year degree, but what can I do with the Associate of Applied Science one? Well, now you can go and you can see exactly, here are the employers and the job titles of our exact graduates that you can look at. And I can tell you, I've searched several 4-year in other colleges, and I've not seen anything with this level of transparency or interactivity. And further, we have a lot, even though our AAS degrees are designed to be straight to workforce, a lot of our students still continue into 4-year degree programs. One of the most familiar for most people here would be mechanical engineering. We have some transfer pathways essentially that are 2+2 programs with Austin P and Tennessee Tech, and that shows up very well right there. So this really is helpful to advisors, admissions counselors, for any student that is undecided, wants to balance and weigh their options, or someone who is ready to graduate and they're trying to start their job search. This is a really good tool to help them with that. And to further assist with that, if you click on this link here at the bottom, we've got this tool right here. How many, just a show of hands real quick, are familiar with our PAUSE initiative? All right, the people's hands I was expecting were going up. But for those who have never heard about that, other than realizing PAUSE sounds like something like a panther, which might have something to do with our mascot. But PAUSE is an acronym for, Dr. Firestone, what's the full acronym for PAUSE? It's... Whoa. That was lightning fast. Purposeful advising with students. The goal of this program is before anyone sees an advisor, they go and they see a couple videos and take ONET's personal interest inventory assessment so that they get an idea of thinking about, okay, when I see an advisor for the first time and I'm having a conversation of what my major is going to be, I'm thinking about the career. What am I going to do beginning with the end in mind going into this advising appointment? And when you take ONET's personal interest inventory, you get what's called RISEC for short, because it's a government term and its acronyms are where it's at. But that's basically, you have these different categories here of personal interest, and there's a nice little reference here for those who don't know about to look into. But your results will rank your top 3. And what I've put together here, powered by data that Christian Lockhart has done, he mapped out all of our majors according to what ONET says for the RISEC results. So if you get something like I'm social and enterprising and conventional, now I've gone and labeled, narrowed down the exact majors that we currently offer that fit that. Now this is helpful that you notice that I can do just a couple at a time, so that can go and really open up your options. And you might have some students that come in, they're like, I really want to be an accountant. And you see these go, you clicked on accounting, and then these narrow down, you're like, well, I'm investigative and enterprising, but I'm social and not conventional. Now an advisor can go and look and talk and be like, well, are you okay giving up the social elements for this type of position? Are you okay dealing with the conventional elements going into this? So you can have a targeted conversation with the student to really help personalize and customize to what will work best for them going forward. So this is just applying, again, same data with this, and then one extra chart that Christian Lockhart helped build, and we have these new amazing tools that honestly are kind of unparalleled. One thing to note with how our reporting works is every reporting year we go and we look at the leading outcome per student for that reporting year. Now, as far as all the data that we have, some students actually get a couple certificates on the way to their degree, or they might have multiple degrees, and they might have multiple outcomes. But what gets reported for our placement percentage rate is the leading outcome. What would happen if we went and we looked at every outcome for every degree and certificate that we awarded, independent of just the student by itself? You'll be able to see, first off, the placement percentage looks a little different because every single outcome is factored in that. So that has no bearing on our official placement rates. What we're showing here is just general total population. How is everyone employed and using their degree percentage-wise, and then we have counts here. And the nice thing about this is a Power BI application. We can go and we can actually start to see where some of these things overlap. So we've got 16, 17, we've got a lot of continuing education people. So we can go and we can see that those who are continuing their education make up 30.38% of those who are using their degree. Further, we can go and look the other way around and say, for those who are using their degree, we have a couple people who also had some family issues, medical issues, and yet they still were able to find a job using their degree. That's pretty commendable. And then further, we can go and break this down into general departments as far as business, computer technology, engineering, media, and you can get a lot of really interesting insights. But what was it that I was talking about before as far as being able to connect this with other data sources and seeing where there's overlap and opportunity? Well, this links to several components that we pull from Achieving the Dream demographic. Special thanks to IEAP for helping provide this data to link. Now we can go and we can look at things based on first generation students. Well, first off, let's look so we can get a context here. And It's funny, it's literally the only one that won't allow for zooming in. So here we have 45, 48, and 54. And first generation students seem to have a little bit of an edge on the average going into, which is interesting. You can take some of whatever your theories are behind your head on why that could be. If we go and look at full-time and part-time, what's everyone's guess for, do you think part-time students will have an advantage getting a job using their degree, or full-time? Part-time? Yeah. I would say part-time, and that definitely looks to be the case. Just the fact that most of our part-time students are going part-time because they're working a job already. So you have areas to go and kind of get a feel for how some of that data looks. But if you go and you look at, and we'll have a conversation here of some of the pitfalls and challenges, this is zooming in into race and ethnicity. And when it comes to looking at any form of data, you have to look at what is, you can say, statistically significant. But we have here, for whites, we have 2,500 for the number. That's a good size number that you can do a lot with. For African Americans, we have 130. You can do a little bit with that. Hispanic, Latinos, 79, and 2 or more races is 71. Those you can, if you see consistency with the numbers, you can start to identify trends. But with American Indian being 14 out of 3 years of reporting data, and Native American being 7, and unknown being 15, those numbers are really too low to really identify trends. And some of that is apparent for as far as showing this number is all over the place, and then if you look at the raw counts, you can't really get a meaningful trend out of this. When you work with a lot of third-party vendors like Navigate, they're always, when they build their machine learning algorithms, they're gonna wanna work with 10 years of data, and with only having 3 years of data, you can see very quickly why that can be an issue here. But one thing that is interesting to point out, if we go on the other end, whites are so overrepresented that they are the average. They're about 85% plus of the data. Their numbers by themselves are not going to break down as far as showing different trends. But if you go and you look at a mid-range one, you'll see that African Americans actually perform a little bit better. They're about the same 16, 17, but the previous 2 years, they have a slight edge on the average. Whereas Hispanics are a bit below. So with those as different measures, you can then go and see, okay, within that group, are first gens doing better? It kind of teeter-totters, it's about the same, so there isn't really too much difference there. How about part-time, full-time? Well, these kind of are lopsided. You'd need more data points really to see as far as reporting years to see if there's a real trend there. And then if we go and take things further, we can see if learning support has any contribution. And then you can also break down according, instead of looking at one major over time, you can compare majors, say, within a department. One interesting thing, we go for those that need learning support math and accounting, the ones who need learning support math, and obviously this is biased to those who graduate, but they tend to have a better placement rate of finding a job using their degree. So that's a real, if they're coming into our program and they're struggling with math and they're able to graduate and get a job using their degree that is very math heavy at a better rate than those who don't get that support, that is a huge testament to the support that we are giving those students. And as you can see, you can select on any combination of these and get different insights. And for how many different combinations there are and the numbers that we're working with, it starts to become dizzying. And that is the point of when I was mentioning earlier that machine learning can be very hard to see what's actually going on. That is how those tools are designed, to go and look at combinations of probabilities of each of these different pieces leading to the successful outcomes that we are wanting to work with. Once we can identify which ones are statistically correlating, we can start to have the conversations for as far as, is there more than a statistical correlation? Is there an actual cause that we can work with to create new initiatives to target very specific programs that we want going forward to really be more successful with helping out our students, helping our faculty and staff grow and thrive, and helping our employers in the area get the best graduates we can to do really amazing work with their careers. So if there's any questions, I'm going to be here for a little bit. I'm happy to go and play around with different aspects of any of the applications that I've shown you. But really, I'm just so glad and thankful that you are able to come out today and take a look at this and have an open mind for the potential opportunities of you'll be seeing a lot more of this springing out in different fields and publications in the future. So bear in mind that this is just a tool playing on top of existing data. There's no new data created with any of this. And there's so many insights that can be gained from it. So again, thank you for coming out. Sure.
Okay, on internship.
Yeah.
Show me the impact of that on them actually using the degree in their major.
Yes. So using an internship, the nice thing about this show up here is the translucent is the average. So what you're looking at is accounting, grade increase, hospitality is about even, culinary is a big increase, but this is something where it's nice to have the raw numbers right next to it. It's one of those that if we had more data, this would be more meaningful. And then management is just a pinch under. And for the amount that we're dealing with compared to not, it's very little. And then we also have BCT includes computers. Obviously, database and programming are on the very low end, pure by itself. But computer systems, again, very low. Networking is really the best number, and for whatever reason, that's just a touch lower than average. But if you look at these numbers compared to what's not, oh, that's why it's being hokey. You just have an overwhelming number of people who haven't had the internship to where it's hard to measure the effectiveness of that number. Does that make sense? As in, this average may look lower, but this number represents only, what, like an eighth of the total population, so that's not really an amazing comparison. Any other questions or curiosities? The internship information comes from Banner as far as if they registered for courses that are selected. What we pulled for this proof of concept exploration is just BCT, so we don't have engineering media technologies to look at right now. Yeah.
You know, and trying to measure some of the impact of the early engagement with the careers. I mean, there's plenty of stuff published about students who complete. They're more likely to complete if they know where they're headed.
Yes.
Than if they're just kind of spinning around trying to find a place. But then, that thing about the employees, like where are our people employed, what kind of, you know, I would think you could use that.
Foundation.
Pretty cool. Yeah. And just so y'all know, he built it in Microsoft Power BI, which is a free product.
Yes. Power BI is a free product, and it is.
Paid $300,000.
And this incredibly convoluted program I'm using to view this is Google Chrome, so it's
yeah.
very accessible. I will note just a random
quirk that I think is very odd. Some of the scrolling features don't work as well in Firefox for whatever reason, but that's the only quirk that I found with it.
You know, if we want to make students feel like they belong here and start off the year positive, and you're teaching in one of these AAS programs, then the very first day of class, that would be just an easy thing to say, listen, we have graduates, and
Yeah.
they go on and they get jobs, and they, I mean, it would take 5 minutes,
Yep.
you know, I mean, so,
Can also be part of that.
Yeah.
College
Mhm.
success class.
so yeah, college success, if they're working in there, it just seems like that would be a good start at, you know.
Yep. And even just from my own personal experience, I can say with pretty good certainty that even though these are AAS programs, a lot of the engineering job titles are going to be fairly similar with the job titles of four-year engineers
I'm sure.
for the AA and AAS transfer programs. So that can give them an idea of, yeah, they end up branching out after that, but this gives a lot of ideas for where to start the search. Well, thank you.
1 week to pick his brain.
Looks good. I mean, that looks really good.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot more that I would like to do, but that's honestly why I'm going into this graduate program, because
We won't be able to
I'm not at
finish
the.
after that.
Yeah, I would love to.
How long is it gonna be with you?
Yes.
I will work with sharing. I'll work with sharing with you to get the access to this. As far as just generally what was covered with this presentation, I'll talk with Cindy about it, but these are links to each of the different things we've worked with. They're not on any website right yet. And then, again, I'm trying to have this presentation so it's meant to be shared. So here are extra references for just to show you that one. These are alphabetically.
That's what we want, Ralph. We knew they knew Ralph.
Yes. But these are just good references that really extrapolate on all the issues I was discussing earlier, as far as here's how the University of Illinois is going and approaching their internal stuff, and it's just amazing the different things that they have going on. And this is something that is just, there was little hints of it when I first started the career services a couple years ago. Then there's some more talk of it last year, and now it's just almost every cover article is what the direction of this stuff is going. And I'm super stoked that, you know, for all the things that Pellissippi State has led a lot of national trends as a community college, that you guys are in an amazing position to do a lot of interesting things with this. And one of the interesting challenges with this approach is a lot of things we've done in the past, you'll go and you'll see, okay, you need to do new initiative X. You get all the things of what you're supposed to do with it, you do that, and you're either doing it very well and you're successful with it or not, and you have to figure out how to do that X better. This is a lens of how to approach what you are going to do. So it is every college, every university is going to find their own way of walking. This is telling you how to put one foot in front of the other, but you have to figure out what's the best way for you to walk. Because we offer different majors than any other school. We have different employers that we're working with in the community. We have different students than every other group. This helps us identify to make the best experience for us and what it's going to, at the end of the day, look like for us. It will have some overlap with what's going on elsewhere, but the idea is to be able to have a consistent way to measure and improve the process. And then what we'll find will make us better than anywhere else because we're doing the best for ourselves.
And the job titles for the different companies, are those specific to us? Are they reported by the actual companies? Are they more Department of Labor type titles?
These are reported by, we actually manually call out all of the graduates to get these. We get some of the data from when they fill out the intent to graduate survey, if they're already in these positions by the time that they graduate. But they are manually collected, and then since everything has to be manually entered, I have to go through and essentially revise spellings and that kind of thing. And one thing that would be a good process to go through would be working with program coordinators to figure out as far as, okay, we have, let me load up accounting. Accounting was a really good example because there's so many different levels of accounting. I can't tell if one is the same or not. So do we need to have extra entries for each of those? Yeah, that's the data cleanup is the never-ending struggle.
How do you avoid redundancies within the same job title, but it's defined differently by the company? So accounting clerk at one company might do a different set of tasks than elsewhere.
That's something that we cannot really go into at this time unless there's some miraculous technology that gets invented in the future, but there's no way to really effectively, well, to give kind of an example in academia of what the equivalent of that would be, coming up with transfer agreements for class credits can be a chore in its own, and that requires a great deal of work between the individual institutions going with those individual classes, whereas what we're dealing with here would be the equivalent of trying to measure what the weight of that task is with taking a single course compared to thousands of colleges. Yeah, that'd be a fun challenge, but I'll know what the.
Well, if you think about our purpose, which is to train them in basic theory and application,
Yeah.
that's transferable to
Mhm.
particular employers.
Mhm.
You know, then they should have the skills they need to be trained
Yes,
for that employer.
thank you. All right. Hmm?
Can you say,
Can-
if he's overrated, come on.
In case you all don't know, Kevin, he's been with us for almost 2.5 years now.
Yeah, career service 2.5 years.
Services, he's been technology for a number of years and held a number of roles, but currently in career services and been with me for 2.5 years. And he birthed this baby along with us from like Christian and helping Interpol, a bunch of them, assisting him with that. But he has decided that he's gonna go back to graduate school, going to UT, and expand on what he's showing you here right now, which is, what's it called?
Master of Science in Business Analytics.
So next Wednesday, that's the last day of July,
Yep.
it's Kevin's last day, unless you all can help me chain him to come to the station. But he's been a wonderful asset to Pelican State, especially to my person. We're gonna miss you.
Thank you. It has been a pleasure working both with you and at Pellissippi State. Met a lot of good people here, a lot of particularly great people in this room. I have known and worked with you in varying capacities, and honestly, I wouldn't be at this point if it wasn't for the work I've done with you guys. I wouldn't have learned what I've learned and come to appreciate some of the amazing things that we've done here. So thank you for the opportunity to work with you and to get this to this point.